All right. Hey, y'all. Hi, friendly faces. Good to see you. Welcome to our first ever installation of Common Ground. You're here with On Purpose Oregon, and since we transitioned and rebranded from Be Local PDX to On Purpose Oregon, a part of that effort has been to go from being really focused on serving and connecting B Corp certified companies and employees to inviting and welcoming other purpose-driven leaders and organizations of all types, and especially ones that have pursued and achieved other really amazing third-party certifications. So we're excited to kick off this series with Tom Herring from Benefit Corporations for Good, somewhat incredibly a member of our board, Kim Allchurch Flick, who is a certified B Corp herself, and her agency was the first benefit corporation for good. I'm so sorry
Wow.
to steal that thunder, but for this conversation, it was just a match made in heaven. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Kim.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. This is so exciting. We are in the first of a series called Common Ground. And I think at On Purpose Oregon, what a great way to name a series and think about the future. And also think about what does common ground mean. And the way I look at it is people doing some great things with their organizations and overlapping like concentric circle, but the big picture is larger than either of our organizations alone. So I think it's going to be a wonderful series and delighted to kick it off with Tom Herring. So, Tom, thanks for being here, giving us your time and your wisdom. If you could tell us a little bit about what inspired you to move in the direction of creating benefit corporations for good, and what has your journey been?
Yeah, so interesting journey. Aren't they all though, really, right? I mean, we all have kind of our own interesting little acts that we go through. So, this is actually my third act, and the first two were in the marketing, advertising agency arenas, I should say. And luckily for me, along the way, I got introduced to the idea of not only being a purpose-driven business, but to the Oregon Benefit Company, which was kind of the catalyst for all this. And my co-founder, Marianne Harmer, and I were privileged to hear a little bit about this in about 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And that kind of kicked into us that we really wanted to do something that is very meaningful, that had a deep purpose for us in our third acts. Since then she's retired, and so I think it's this is year 5 now. I've been running benefit corporations for good, but that whole idea of bringing deep meaning into my own life, as well as working with people that are able to feed that, sounded like such a win-win for me. And so that's kind of where we are, 8 years ago. And it all started with writing a book called Putting Soul into Business, where, interestingly enough, we interviewed 11 thought leaders, eight of which were, this is 8 years ago, eight of which were certified B Corps. And the majority, all but one, I think, were a part of Be Local PDX. And they gave us some great information about why they did it, what has been the result, some really great answers from super, as I said, super inspiring leaders of the Be Local PDX community. And in that time, we got introduced to the Secretary of State's office, and the small ombudsman at the time was Ruth Miles. And Ruth had talked to us about the idea of maybe we could come up with a standard for the Oregon Benefit Company. It was the request from the governor, Kate Brown, at the time, who had also initiated and kind of shepherded Oregon becoming a benefit company state in 2014. And so that's kind of that's the start of the story, really. And to this day, I'm still just I'm awed about the people I get to work with, Be Local PDX people, and now On Purpose being such a great community, and this idea of this podcast. And I'll end with just at least this question that I love I've had this on my desktop for many years, but the Helen Keller quote that says something along the lines of, together we can do so, or alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. And I just believe this concept that Wes and Sarah and the board, you Kim, have brought into the thinking that kind of created this On Purpose idea is outstanding. And I always think the more the merrier, particularly when we're talking about helping create meaningful change in the world.
Yeah. Well, and I remember also because I knew Marianne Harmer first when you two had H Collaborative and was kind of brought into that as you were creating this. But one of the things that came up was that at the time, Oregon had something like 1,800 benefit corporations, and they had checked a box on an addendum. And that was about the extent of it. And you and Ruth Miles had conversations about that and how to make things better. So, what created the birth of Benefit Corporations for Good, lovingly known as BCFG, and how has that evolved, and what problems or solutions, problems have been solved and solutions come from that happening? In also keeping in mind that there were the concern about what are 1,800 benefit companies doing when they've checked a box and that's it. There's been little or no verification.
Yeah. Um, an excellent question. So the birth really of this came from, as I just mentioned, writing the book. And the governor wanted a standard that was Oregon based. The other five standards at that point, I think there were even six, as I recall, that was on the Secretary of State's site. Now there's just four: B-Lab, BCFG, Green America, and GRI, I believe, are the four that are there today. But really, the request was to how can we create something that is for a smaller business that is not quite as rigorous as B Lab's process, but yet still kind of be something that builds in accountability and helps businesses grow with purpose. And we call ourselves the on ramp to responsible business, or the on ramp to B Corp certification. And the idea is that if there's a business that really aspires to go to that higher level and that rigorous process, uh, this is a great start. And we encourage our businesses at recertification every year to do that. So I think we saw this need again, as I said, for smaller businesses. How can we help them? And we knew that there was this, legal framework, and this is a great way to be held to this high standard of doing business. Um, and I think the one thing I'll say back on uh, the beginning of this is that we really weren't sure, how this was going to go. We certainly wanted to help businesses, but I think our whole observation at the time was that discussions with small business leaders, in particular, that were doing great things, they felt some frustration that they could not have some certification. And as we always say, it's not really the badge; it's how you conduct yourselves as a triple bottom line business leader.
And that establishes some common ground as well. B Lab's been around for a long time. There are Oregon B Corps, and you started building the BCFG years ago, and now there's some numbers for that also. Could you tell us more about how BCFG has grown outside of the state and also within the state, and a little bit about the bill that passed?
Yes, absolutely. I think how we really saw this, and it's still present today, is we really saw this as a community. We were community building, really, and it had nothing. It had something to do with certification, but more importantly, we wanted to put together businesses that have the same values. Their values are aligned, Let's bring them together. Perhaps they'll do business together. This was our early thinking. And as we're seeing now, 7, 8 years later, that is exactly what's happening, where many of our businesses will work together. Sometimes if there is an industry that's not represented in our community, they will, again, we suggest they talk with, a possible business partner, in a Be Local or now On Purpose organization. But I think that's really how it started, was just trying to bring together these businesses. And so we would go around the state. This is just pre-COVID, where Marianne and I would put on a workshop. And again, there was no selling. It was more about informing that there was this option to become an Oregon benefit company if you are a registered corporation. And one of the funny things, and I'll bring that because you've asked about this, Kim, is that at this time, there were 1,800 or so, as you said. I think they're up to like 3,500 Oregon benefit companies registered right now. 3,500. And I know how small, our community is about 100, and I know, Wes, you guys are 150 to 200, somewhere in there. So where are those other 3,000, businesses? Well, so I asked, we had, a good friend, and I think you guys know, inside the Secretary of State's office, Trevor Leahy, who has just recently left. But I called Trevor one day about a year and a half ago. I said, Trevor, what is up with this? Anyway, can you help explain this? And he started chuckling. He says, Tom, so here's my theory, and don't laugh yet, but this is my theory. So his belief is that when a business leader goes in and fills out the appropriate paperwork on the Secretary of State's site, there is a box, as you said, that says Oregon Benefit Company, registering it as an LLC or an S Corp or C Corp, and also an Oregon Benefit Company. And his thinking, and I am pretty aligned with this now. His thinking was that the leader says to himself, herself, their self, oh gosh, I give benefits to my employees. Yeah, certainly I'm going to be that. He really felt that it was that literal of a translation. And I'm not mocking anybody, but I think there was some confusion. And again, as we all know on this, there's the language in B Corp, BCFG, government, all of that. It's very wonky at best, so trying to understand that, I can see how that could happen. So anyway, back to us getting the book happen. We worked with the state to develop our questionnaire, which is 60 questions, and self-assessed. And then in 2023, I felt that Oregon, Oregon benefit companies deserve some kind of recognition, particularly when they were pursuing state contracts. So I pitched this idea to my state legislator, and she was a freshman at the time, Tweed Tron, and Tweed loved the idea. I was fortunate to work with a guy in Chicago who got similar legislation on a county level. But this basically allows people to, the idea between House Bill 3572 is that it's an idea where you come in, if you're pitching a state agency and you're going through the RFP process, you as a owner of that particular business will be accorded a 5% advantage if your pricing for whatever particular contract is over that. You are still considered, across the board even. And again, this is not in lieu of WEBs or MBEs or WBs. What I said, WBs, MBs, etc. But that you're of equal, at least, value if you're pitching that. And so this is one thing that I've really tried, and we got it through. I mean, it's remarkable that everybody that was in that, I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest with you. I mean, I had some good coaching along the way, but I'm not a lawyer. I really don't know state law all that particular well, particularly getting down in the weeds like that. But what the heck, it passed and became law, and I think January 2023, I believe it became law. So anyway,
Well, and well done. And those acronyms are women-owned, minority-owned, emerging small business, and now benefit corporation are supposed to be given preference in the COVID system for requests for proposal, RFPs for government contracts. So well done, because I also believe that this is the first state to have done that.
You know what, Kim, you're absolutely right. There were two counties that did similar legislation, Los Angeles County and Cook County, which I mentioned where my friend, um, uh, has been a deep, thought leader in that particular community for a long time. And I'll titillate just a little bit here that I am working on another bill. I can't really get into details right now, but another bill that would benefit every Oregon benefit company in the state. And I'm in the early stages. I've got some receptivity. I'm working with right now a couple different legislators, and so we'll see what happens. But it would be exciting because anybody who is an Oregon benefit company would find an advantage to this particular bill. So hopefully I get on the docket in 2027. I should know about that in the next month or two, I think. So
Great. Well, we'll stay tuned with bated breath, and
yeah,
if we can help, let us know. Tell us a little bit about building your community and beyond the certifications, but also what have you been doing within the community? And then I've also got a follow-up question about that. It just still bugs me a little bit. Let me back up for a second before the community piece. So, with these bills, do the bills count for all those companies that just check the box on the addendum but are not verified? Or would it
no,
only be for verified?
you have to be in good standing. And
Okay,
the key bullet point here on good standing is that you must, as the statute requires you, to produce an annual benefit report. Meaning, how did you benefit your community? How did you benefit people? How did you benefit planet? And that is something that our community, and I think Be Local has done the same thing, where you cannot be recertified through us without going, building and producing a annual benefit report. So there's some that
superb.
are, yeah, yeah. So
So, so that narrows the criteria. So the companies that have demonstrated that would be applicable in that COVID situation as well.
right,
So,
right.
yeah. So talk to us about the community you're building. You've been at this for a few years and you're doing a lot of things out in the community. So share with us how your view of community.
Yeah, so 4 years ago, I just ended year four. I initiated a what was then kind of a quarterly meetup, and we called it Happy Hour for Good, playing off our brand. And the idea was again to bring people locally together to learn, to meet each other. Again, as I always say at these meetings, values align. Why not be hanging with some other people that have the same values as you? And then bring in a speaker, and more having a conversation. So speakers sometimes more of a conversationalist, I should say, on a particular subject matter expert on something that would help our purpose-driven leaders do a better job of whatever that may be. And that, we've had several leaders that are outstanding, you know, thinkers in DEI. We've had some carbon, reducing your carbon output. We've had speakers about how to bring a little more joy, and some marketing. We've also had key things that I think help our small business leaders, because these small business leaders, the majority in our group, usually wear the hat of, you know, marketing director, HR director, bottle washer, the whole gamut of things. And so we want to, help them just make their job a little bit easier so they have some knowledge and, what are some solutions to the challenges that they face. And these things have grown. So this past year, and we use the school year kind of as our guideline. So beginning in September of 25 we just had our last one in June. We did these 2 meetings per quarter, and we've alternated them between a downtown location at one of our certified businesses, Pacific West Bank, and at Place to Be, which I think most people on this call are aware of. And Corey's been great about it. And we've just kind of made it east side, west side, east side, west side. And what I've seen, over these 4 years is these get-togethers they continue to be very inspiring personally for me, selfishly for me. But what they do is they create this energy that I come out and I'm kind of buzzing about how cool this is. And I'm just an observer, really. I mean, I stated a few things about, where the bathrooms are and you introduced the speaker, or in many cases, Kim, you've brought so many good speakers you've introduced. And then I just watch these people get together and learn. And I usually have to kick them out of each space just because people that are in those spaces, they need to go home, if that's their office or whatever. So, and I think that again, as a result, they're working together. They seek each other out. I always, I'm a big believer in, meet somebody new because your values are aligned, as I've said a couple, 3 times here today. So why would you not want to meet somebody else, regardless of, what that person's, you know, career or business or profession is? And yeah, that's been really exciting. And we just started our first virtual one. I was talking about this to Wes before we got on, that Michelle Lagos had conducted, and we're going to start doing those. So our businesses that are out of Oregon or downstate or east side of the state also have an opportunity to participate in meeting each other and learning a little bit and capture some of that energy.
Yes, and could you tell us about, you say small businesses and what is your definition of that, but also types, sectors, and what are you seeing and how is your movement growing? And then we get into the common ground of intersecting with On Purpose Oregon and other organizations as well.
Yeah, so our businesses are basically kind of the spectrum of you know, I would say current leading businesses right now. So a lot of professional services. Solar has been a very big business industry for us. We have some manufacturing. We are in the process of, we have an AI specialist we just certified. And and the small business being typically our business size are from from a solopreneur to 10 to 15 employees. That tends to be our sweet spot. But I will say that we have 2 large businesses, one at 1,500 and another one on the East Coast at 1,000. And I think part of the reason for those, the one on the East Coast is both, as again, dual certified. So they're B Corp as well certified and BCFG. And I will be, full disclosure, I did help this company when I was back in my, I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm a recovering copywriter. So when I was doing content, I helped them with their websites, but this was probably 10 years ago. And then when Marianne and I launched it, she totally wanted to be part of our community. So, that's been, that's kind of the size and the types of businesses. And I'll add this, Kim, that I have yet to be approached in 8 years, maybe twice, maybe 2 times I can think of, no more than that businesses that are interested in joining our community, without a doubt, are already purpose driven. They check the box in terms of being triple bottom line. They just haven't had a framework or a way to verify and certify. And so that's been our, that's how we get connected with them. But it's very impressive that there are a lot more businesses out there that are doing such good work. And certainly I think we need it more than ever in this particular period of time that we're all living in.
Thank you, indeed. And your broader landscape, how does BCFG fit within the ecosystem of other certifications? And you've expanded beyond Oregon as well.
Yeah, so I think we have really, we have such respect for B Lab and 1% for the planet and Fair Trade and People and Planet First. All these are great organizations, and again, I think we just want a bigger tent, and that's the tent that these great organizations have helped, and we're just a small part, coming into that tent. So I don't see anything about competing. I think we're addressing some different segments, but we all believe about, promoting fair wages and environmental sustainability and equitable treatment of workers and producers. And, I think what I see, if anything, is that we're just kind of a connective tissue between the law and, lived practice, and people have heard about this. And I always ask, when I hear, I get people, particularly from out of state, how they heard about us. And they've either done some research or in many cases, particularly in the solar business, there's one in California, there's one in New Mexico, we have one in New Jersey. We have one in Oregon. We have another one that's going to be coming in from California and one in New York. They belong to a industry group that the majority have been certified B Corps, but for one reason or another, they decided they wanted to come with us, and then the other told these others. There's about 100 of them, I think, in this group I think it's called Amicus. And again, a really cool industry group, very high standards. I've talked with the executive director there a couple times, but that is really how these, I think, people out of state hear about us first, is really through word of mouth, which of course in my ad days was always, I think, the best way, to have your message heard.
Absolutely. I'd love to invite everyone to also talk about what it means to have common ground. And we're of different organizations that overlap in so many things. And Tom, I see one of the things you've done really well is, and on Purpose Oregon also, is it's not solely about the certification. The certifications, verifications bring us together, but the conversations are often not about that. They're about how do we help each other? How can we move forward? What can we do in community? How can we serve? How can we help make businesses be stronger? How can we weather whatever the challenges are? We all were in this before COVID. We went through something, and a lot of that was togetherness. We adapted. And so I wondered if we could all chat about that a little bit. What does it mean to be in this place, Oregon, and branching beyond that a little bit? And what does common ground mean? Tom, did you go away? Oh, there you are.
Oh, I think I'm here.
I took away the spotlight if we were going to chat for a second. I had a thought, it's a thought maybe leading to a question about that. Something that resonated that Tom said is the companies and the leaders that show up to get BCFG certified, really are generally purpose-driven organizations the moment they arrive. I hear this really frequently from B Corp leaders, which is to say, the B, the B impact assessment didn't in many cases force me to change this, wholesale a whole bunch of my practices. It wasn't about redirecting. It was about codifying and you know, anyway, I just kind of reflecting on that because to me it makes me feel that there is something shared in our opportunity to capture more of the 3,500 benefit companies and so many other organizations that you walk down the street, you see how they are leading in their marketing with values and how important that is to them. In many cases about their community commitments. um, so maybe I'm wondering, you know, what is it for the companies that have come to and stayed with benefit corporations for good, this unifying experience of the assessment and the accountability that helps them grow and stay committed, or have you seen instances that you could speak to directly where maybe I joined and it didn't change my business operation wholesale from a standards perspective, but it changed it from an opportunities perspective with the community.
Yeah. So I think what I find the feedback I get from leaders that have been with our community 5, 6, 7 years, and there's some that are definitely been there that long. What I think they appreciate more than anything is the idea that they are on a constant uh, path to be a better leader. And it's going through those 60 questions, the self-reflection as a leader about what am I doing for DEI? What are my green practices right now? We brought in a little bit on AI, and we're going to continue to grow, into that part of our certification. But what I found them more than anything, Wes, is they come back and say, boy, these are things that I need to keep in mind because, there's so many things that, again, as I said, I'm wearing 9 hats, but these are really important things for me to be a better leader, to attract, a better employee or a better employees, to have better team members, to attract the right customers that know that I stand for something. And, you know, sometimes it's not the most convenient thing to have the kind of packaging because I got to pay more for this right now, but this is what I believe in. This is who I am. This is the whole cloth that makes me up, makes me. And I think really that is probably the biggest thing that I have heard from most of my longtime leaders right now. I think one of the hard things for them to see, and obviously you and definitely in the Be Local PDX community know this, is that newer companies want to see some kind of financial. And that's been kind of how a lot of people have been wired for a long time. So, but I think as they move through it, they see that it's not so much, yes, they need to make a profit. And we're always saying this, that if you're not sustainable, your business isn't sustainable. So we talk a little bit about, you got to make sure you have the right practices, and we have some ideas on how they can help grow that. But I think it's more it's how does this fit with your values? And then more importantly, a lot of them say, and it helps me sleep better at night. And I think you all, I think anybody listening to this all understands that.
Indeed. And
Yeah.
and I've seen people helping each other weather some storms. And I've also been seeing more and more people doing business together and relying on each other. And with On Purpose Oregon as well, building an ecosystem where it's trusting and people come in and know who they can rely on. I think it's really a great feeling to have.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like you've got a question there, Kim. Do you want to take that, or I think that was,
I think that was
oh,
a
sorry.
It
clap.
was clapping.
It
Yes.
was
Karen.
clapping.
Yeah, it's Karen. Yeah, great. Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
that's
yeah, I think that was
wonderful.
a great question, Wes. Totally. Yeah. Um,
Yeah. So how do you see us moving forward as people in similar organizations? I'm in all of them because I love this ecosystem so much. But how do you see common ground with On Purpose Oregon, which is a very intentional new name, and I'm also excited about a
great.
fabulous rebrand. Where does this take us all?
I think so. What I've worked hard on, and Wes has been ideal since he's come aboard, um, is that number one, I like the idea of sharing our events as much as possible. And our events are always open to anybody that wants to come. It is wide open. And that has been by intention from the get-go. And I see, we have very similar values that way. But I think the more that we get together, we're able to promote our events. If there are referral pathways for businesses that are ready to certify, there are many cases where I'll say, you need to talk with Kim. I'll either, point to you or to Wes. if they are more ready for a more rigorous certification, that's what they're desiring, then I want to put them in the right place. So I think that idea, we all win. That's the thing. It is such a win-win opportunity. So I think collaborating where we can, referral pathways, advocacy, coalitions. And as I've talked to Wes about this particular bill, and if I get some traction, I'm going to need some leaders from On Purpose Oregon community to come and help testify with a couple from my own community because I think this bill is so important. But more importantly, the legislators need to hear from these small business leaders what this change, this bill could mean to their businesses and to their community. And my pitch to them, of course, is that these are businesses we want to remain in the state right now. And with the governor's focus on this prosperity roadmap, you got to take care of those businesses that are here right now before state of Washington or state of Idaho or Nevada or Texas want to take them away. But anyway, I think it's back to that. It's just this collaborating in very simple ways. Promoting our organizations, promoting our events, and I just think we get bigger as a result of that. And that there is strength in numbers.
Yeah, and you brought up something too about supporting each other through different things. I think that's a big part of why we're together, bringing up bills, but also recognizing that there are difficulties that have caused really good companies to leave the state. And and that is something that I'll mention another organization that we all know and support, but Better Portland, a lot of that has been recognizing that type of thing and talking about it to legislation. So as common ground, our collective voices, if it rises to legislation, might make a difference.
Yeah.
So how do you suggest that we keep the conversations going across this common ground, and how can we do more together and support each other? And what do you see? And this is for everybody in the audience. What do you see the possibility?
I'm gonna um I'm gonna jump in. I think this is actually really relevant to what you just said, Kim. It comes back to something Tom said earlier, which I really love the way you frame benefit corporations for good as both an on-ramp and an alternative. Um, because in the spirit of, collective growth, of pulling in, all types of organizations that would benefit from a framework, would benefit from more values aligned community, right? To me, having both of those there suggest movement. It suggests you're going to pass it along when a company is a better fit somewhere else, and you're there for when a company needs you in that specific fit of benefit corporations for good. I've seen, I think this is really cool. Benefit corporations for good are posting their scores, after their certification renewals, I guess, or after their initial certifications. So this is the question that it sparked for me. For when for when you do have benefit corporations for good that opted for a more accessible, financially more accessible in terms of time commitment, and in some ways less rigorous certification, that right-sized certification for a small business or a business at a different stage. When you see them grow to a point of just like, I don't know who I'm going to shout out here, but I've seen a couple recently. It looked like the bars to the top,
Yeah.
across the board. I mean, they are excelling. Have you found that the decision to move forward, potentially to add a more rigorous certification, or even to shift from one to another, is based on the need for more rigorous accountability or different incentives, marketing incentives, partnership incentives that would come from the communities, from the brand, equity? of these different um, certification and certification communities?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So just to back up a step, we last year we went through our first 2.0 version of our questionnaire, and I think it tightened the screws up a little more. And I think I'll probably do it again um, between now and the end of the year. We'll get another like a 2.8 kind of version. But what I suggest typically to those businesses is that you might want to consider pursuing B Lab certification. Um, I think it will be more meaningful to you. Um, or you can have both. You know, as some of our businesses, we have 6 or 7 businesses that are certified in both communities. Um, but one of the things that Marianne and I, when we built this, we really wanted to keep our focus on the 1 to 5 to 1 to 10 business. So I don't know if we'll alternate. That certainly is a great question to ask, Wes. And your timing couldn't be better because I'm meeting with my marketing brain trust tomorrow night. And that might be a question I bring in, and I will give you full credit on that. They all know you, by the way, because they're also certified B Corps that are part of my group. Anyway, yeah, it's a great question. I have not considered that yet. But I think, as I said, right now it's kind of been the default is you guys should totally think about upping it now. And number two, uh, you know, there is going to be a little more rigorous questionnaire that'll be coming from us on probably the next go around. So yeah, good food for thought for sure.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. And another thing I love about what you do, Tom, is including the students and giving projects to students. Could you tell us a little more about that? And then we'll go into Q&A after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate, as a University of Oregon journalism graduate, I have been able to tap Allen Hall PR, which is a student-led PR team that has worked with me every year over the past 4 years, and now will be going into year 5. And what they do is they get a little bit of mentoring from me. I get their creativity, their energy, their vibrancy in helping create our social media. They've done most of all the work that's done social media at this point has been through them, which has kind of been our primary media focus, at this point. And I will add that I'm going to be the other. I think I've mentioned this to you, Kim, but the other thing is I've just signed up. I think I'm going to be part of the Portland State MBA capstone program beginning in January this coming year, which I'm very excited about, getting some really smart young brains, around this organization and see, what else I might be able to do to keep the movement growing, moving and growing. So students are so much, I spoke at a classroom this last 2 weeks ago or whatever, and I know that Wes, you've done a lot of this too, and as well as Kim, and there's such a good energy you get coming out of that room. I said I'd like to have this a lot during the day. I mean, it is so good. So I have a lot of hope. I get a lot of hope. So from our younger generation for sure.
Oh, I love leading into optimism too.
I
Uh,
yes, yeah.
and I think that's what this whole ecosystem gives me as well. It's optimism that people coming in to form a business, businesses are hard work, but doing so with a North Star and and then collectively making
Look,
so many impacts that then it, it's just like, oh, wow, we need this. We need more of this
here's
kind
the
of
one
thing.
thing, and then we'll get into Q&A. Because as you're leading into something I was going to mention here toward the end, but um, I saw a study yesterday in the New York Times, and I had to track down this study, and it was 2024 Gallup Walton Family Foundation, and I think most of you guys know that they're very education focused, and this was on particular Gen Z, And I'm just going to read this quote, but they found that purpose is central to Gen Z's definition of a successful life, with the generation prioritizing meaningful work, personal passions, and strong relationships over wealth or status. And I took that with such a big, I breathed that in as deep as I could into my lungs. And I said, man, that is going to put a little pep in my step here. And so anyway, I thought I was very excited and optimistic about that.
Is
Very.
Gen Z old enough to vote? I haven't.
I'm sorry, it's what?
Are
It's
Gen Zs old enough to
some are,
vote?
yeah. There's some that are. Yeah, I think it's now they're 15 to 29 or 27 or something. You guys correct me. It's something like that.
Isn't that encouraging?
I have a nephew that's in that
Yeah.
generation.
Questions? Anybody?
Yeah.
I I really appreciate you setting this up, Kim, and running it. I think it's a great idea to have values aligned organizations connect, and that's something we're trying to do at On Purpose Oregon. And so, Tom, I'm really interested in learning more about where you see uh, how these values aligned organizations in our region can help each other out. Um, both at the organization level and then at the getting our members kind of cross pollinating.
Yeah, Mike, that's a really good question. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think wherever we can collaborate, so starting with events, I think, as I mentioned, having our businesses seek out certified B Corps where they need expertise in an industry or an area that is not represented in our community at this point in time. I think just that supporting, is a great organizational cross pollination that they bring. They bring their passion and their way of doing business with another business. I think one of the big things that I see, and I've talked with Wes about this and with Kim, one of the hard things I think right now is that we need to get I still think there are so many businesses that are not aware of B Corp or obviously BCFG, and I think there is this need to have some kind of public information campaign, and none of the 40 states that offer benefit corporation legislation did any of that at the time that
Mhm.
they passed the legislation. So I think that is awareness is still a very big problem, and how we can do that I'm not quite sure, but I think that's going to be something I'm going to be talking obviously to my new team at U of O, which now will not be till the fall, and the same with this MBA group. And then I think just to continue conversations with everybody on this, and particularly Wes, Kim, and you, and ideas. I'm open to however we can do it. So it's if this bill comes through, I will say that this will change a lot. I think this will could be a very strong catalyst for growth, at least in our state. And I'm very optimistic about that. I'm more an optimist than a pessimist. So you know,
And Karen has a question, and I have
sure,
a thought too.
yeah,
I wanted to add that I really appreciate BCFG and the whole benefit community because it presents a different way, a better way of doing business. And especially being in the AI industry and hearing about people traveling to the Bay Area. And sometimes there's billboards about, kind of bragging about how many head count has been reduced, just presenting that there's an alternate way to do business and still be a profitable business is really critical in this time where there's a lot of uh, doing business in a way that harms. So,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'll share this with y'all listening. So Karen has been helping me. So I got a request from one of our clients. I'll have a call next week about AI in particular, and how does this, how does he do his business? What policies, whatever. And so I've roughed out a very it needs a lot of work, white paper. And I've asked Karen to be the subject matter expert. And so she and I will have a call later this week about how this, because I think it's a big question and it's only going to continue to get more pervasive. With our community, with B Corp community, I think everybody is not quite sure. And so, what can we offer? Um, as organizations, what are some standards that we can kind of build around that? And so, anyway, um, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and my thought in this conversation is also, and it brings me back to a statistic that I quote frequently, and I'm paraphrasing, but the Nielsen studies that talked about how two-thirds of consumers globally are willing to pay more for products and services when they know a company has good values. Now, it's very paraphrased. And then a study after that was said that 73% of millennials. So knowing that is, how do they find us? How do they find the purpose-driven companies? And it still feels clunky that, B Lab has a directory. Okay, that's fine. We can do some searching. You have a directory on BCFG, and yet it's not nearly enough. And what can we think about doing in a future sense to help each other and help those consumers? And we are consumers as well. How can we connect those dots more? And we see this with the Purchasing with Purpose movement, that's also an attempt to do this. But maybe if there's more PR and really public commentary, some of that costs money though. So how do we think about being incredibly clear in the future so that consumers can find, and we make the trip easier? And then the other thing we know is, and I'm sure all of you are like this, I'll go into a store, sometimes it's consumer goods, but sometimes it's service as well, and get to know somebody, chat them up a little bit and find out they're doing amazing things. And I'd say, wow, you're an impact driven company. Let's talk about this. What do we do? And they've never heard of the certifications, and they're content to not certify, but yet they are there. How do we also encourage them to become part of an ecosystem?
Well, my immediate I have a comment, but my immediate thought there is you need quick wins. You need quick wins to emphasize to someone who doesn't um, doesn't feel they need the validation of the third party stamp to support to support on the customer acquisition side, to support their, I've had plenty of companies say, hey, we use the B impact assessment as a measurement tool. We don't feel we need it as a validator. And of course, then it's an additional investment. What are the quick win? I mean, this is something I think we're thinking about at On Purpose Oregon, but to me, the theory of the case a little bit, coming back to Mike's question and growth, is synthesis. And like we need to hold hands in a way that perhaps Oregonians and Portlanders especially are not always eager to do, because we're experimental, and we're front edge. I mean, I come from a different part of the country, it's more present to me how experimental this place is in terms of its ways of organizing and doing business. But when I hear both poles of this issue, which is, some of the largest companies that might be in our community, some of the largest B Corps, which are national, multinational corporations, may not see the value of association with a company, out of the gate, may not see the value of association with benefit corporations for good and that 1 through 10, head count focus.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I've heard some really small B Corps, I've heard some small other companies look at really large B Corp certified, rigorous certification, and really values aligned companies that with a pure distrust, because there has been an emphasis on growth there, and they've reached a certain size and scope that feels so different kind of qualitatively than the type of business that they are. To me, the distinctions begin to hinder us a little bit, because because when the top line is purpose in all of these instances, and benefit corporations for good has an extremely high trust environment. I can tell when I'm there in the room with you all. The same is true among B Corps, among on purpose Oregon members. How do we translate that in a way that when we hold hands, like that can be really powerful, and sustain the trust. Yeah. I don't know if that actually was a theory of the case, but I feel like that's where on purpose Oregon is working.
I think that's a great those are great comments, Wes. And I do think quick wins, but it but then again, are we quick? Are we a quick win community? And I don't, I mean, that's a tough question, but I like the idea of how do we work together on this. And I don't know, I don't have a specific other than just the obvious ones that I stated earlier, but I think there's a lot of merit to explore how we can do this. And um, all the others, the 1% for there are a lot of 1% for the planet businesses in Oregon that are neither B Corp or BCFG,
Mhm.
and maybe the three of there's something to explore there. I think I really do. I think there's something very meaningful. It could be very powerful, actually. And I think here it's Oregon is. You're right. I mean, Oregon's a great place to start. I mean, we have bodies, so to speak. So
That's a good
yeah,
point.
yeah.
That's a good point. Well, and I think businesses in general are seeking to do business together. That's why BNIs were created, which is not my favorite way of doing it. I like this community better. But and there's leadership groups and there's cohorts and this and that and the other. So people are definitely seeking, and some are more findable, some are doing what people want. But in the community of mission driven, purpose driven, building that understanding and growing it. How can we still make it better? And I think there's progress. There's always progress. I think this rebrand of On Purpose is a big step. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and
It is.
and I'm just pondering how to make it a continuous effort to the increase the awareness.
That's the homework for everybody listening right now.
I
Any
it is.
any final thought from our guest, Tom or Kim?
And I'd love to
I
hear takeaways from anybody.
Yeah, I think I'll leave it back to that one quote I was saving for the end about just, there's hope, in the generation that's emerging, not only in the workplace but in society in general. I find great comfort in that. And um I you know I think however we can work together, let's continue to explore that.
I concur.
Thanks, everybody. This has been great. A first
On,
edition
yeah,
with a
first edition Common Ground.
with a last minute show from Clementine.
Nice,
Thanks,
nice.
everybody. Hope you
Nice
have a
to
great
Thank
rest
meet
of
you,
your
you.
day.
Thanks so
everyone.
Really
much.
appreciate it. Nice to
Thanks,
Everyone
meet you,
listen
Tom.
Sarah.
to the recording.
Thanks,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
guys.
Bye
Thank
bye.
Bye.
Thank
you.
you all.